Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. Now this one is going to be a little bit of a departure kind of from what I normally do on the channel, looking at different cards that are coming into my collection. But I had the opportunity recently to fill in the form to check out the new product Card Ladder that came out a couple of days ago. So I'm going to be looking at it from the perspective of somebody that is seeing it kind of for the first time. I've only had a couple of days with it, as would most people at this point. It's only June 25th when I'm recording this. So at the moment, it's only been live for a couple of days, but I've had the chance to kind of play around with it a little bit, look around, and get a little bit of a sense for what it is in terms of where it ranks kind of in the spectrum of analytical tools and potential analytical tools. And it's been very interesting, and I want to kind of give you some of my thoughts and early impressions on this, and also some of the questions that I have. So I want to make clear, this isn't a full-fledged review because in a couple of days you really can't do that. And also, one of the things is that it's effectively a beta, really what it is. It's not really a full-fledged, fleshed-out product. Now, what makes it interesting is what I'm going to say is I kind of have to grade it on a bit of a curve, but I will still bring up certain questions that I'm going to have because even taking into consideration some of the limitations of the time they've had, I still think they've done a very impressive job in building something out here. But at the same time, where I kind of find it interesting and where I kind of have to look at it from a little bit of a sideways angle is that at the end of the day, after the trial period is done and in this early beta, you're still looking at something where they're asking for $15 a month. So the question is, how does this compare in terms of concept and execution to something like the market movers tool that Sports Card Investor is trying to promote on his channel? It's got certain similar concepts, and obviously it's got some differences that try to set it apart. So right now when I'm looking at it, this is one of the front pages here, and I'm actually looking at the undervalued category. And a lot of what comes out of this, where they're trying to make it different, is that they're evaluating things based on proprietary algorithms and formulas that they've developed. And the idea being that these formulas get adjusted and turned into over time so that the predicted value starts to more closely reflect what the actual market value is and try to kind of figure out what's undervalued or overvalued or where things rank. Now, one of the other things I'll point out to you is that you have something like the score here, where it ranks it based on an algorithm, based on number of sales and how the prices are going on it. So it's kind of cool, all the different elements. So if you're a bit of a stats nerd, this is actually kind of sweet. It's kind of fun to look at, see what the highest prices cards are. And obviously you got the Metal Universe PMG Green here at the top, certainly. And then you're looking at different players. You got Steve Nash PSA 10 here. Now, one of the things I want to make clear, my goal here in making this video is not to either praise or to slag it. It's not to do like a full-fledged review, as I said, because you can't, only with a couple of days, and you have to understand it's a beta and kind of take that into account. But I do still have the ability to look at it from the perspective of a user, look at the UI, look at how it functions, look at how it looks, look at how it operates, but then also bring in questions that I would have if I was looking at it from the perspective of someone that wanted to invest in it, because in reality, even though it's a beta and even though it's a service, at $15 a month, you're still being asked indirectly to kind of invest into it. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later as I kind of go through this a little bit more. And you'll see kind of why I have to look at it from that perspective. So to begin with, like I said, you've got all these different tabs. And I think the key here is that the UI is extremely clean. So from that perspective, I really like it. You've got here your information where you can do your account, feedback, and log out. And then all of these, it's pretty intuitive. It's fairly self-explanatory, and they didn't clutter it up. It's about as clean interface as you're going to get, and you're able to search in different bars. Now, let me tell you, I'll go through these quickly, and then I'll tell you one of the first things that struck me when I started playing around with it. So obviously you've got the ladder with the different versions and things you can click on. And then you've got your scores and things that you can monitor here that will show you how the different cards go up and down the rankings. Now you've got the news feed, which is interesting because it's a bit of an area where you can curate it. So right now I've got it set to added, which shows you cards that have been recently added to the database. And it allows you to go and check them out. And I'll talk about this again in a minute. But if you go to all, it gives you access to different articles. And this is interesting because it creates a feed where they can give you access and also kind of show you different content creators. So they can kind of feature content creators and different articles and things that might be interesting, videos, and it allows you to see. So right here, you got an article here from the Low Post. So if you open that up, you can actually check it on a podcast, and it gives you a link to it. So you can create a curated feed where you can promote certain creators and different sites and agencies. So you've got the Basketball Card podcast here, which I listen to. So this is a link to episode 41. In the same vein, you can see some more information here. Now, when you're looking at it, and of course, a daily sales recap. So like I said, there's a bunch of different, this is a link to a YouTube video here from 90s B-Ball Cards. So you can see all that as well, and another podcast episode. And if I scroll down a little bit more, so this right here is a link to Sports Card Live, which is another YouTube channel that I go to. And of course, House of Jordans. Now, I'm a bit remiss. In kind of my introduction, I failed to mention this. This whole card ladder concept is basically a collaboration between the House of Jordan's crew, the three of the individuals involved in that podcast, and the subsequent spin-off podcasts, and also Cardboard Chronicles. So they're kind of working together. Now, from my understanding from the discussion is that the gentleman from Cardboard Chronicles is the one who's actually doing a lot of the coding behind the scenes, and that is also something that's going to come into play when I kind of discuss the value proposition here, and kind of where one of the questions that I would have as pertains to it, and kind of where I see some potential issues coming up. And what I'll do is I'll give you a bit of a sneak preview. Any question or issue that I think might potentially exist here is going to come down to one word: scalability. So just bear that in mind and remember it, because scalability is going to come up again. So like I said, you got the news feed here. You got all these different, again, clean interface. You can switch all between all these different things. I don't want to go feature by feature, so we're going to move a little quicker. This one here allows you to compare different cards. So just like it sounds like, you can type in a card. So let me just do this. 1986 Fleer Jordan. Sure, let's do that. Let's just compare the base Jordan. So we'll do that first, and then I'll compare it to the sticker. So just for the sake of argument, why not? So there you go. And let's do like a 3-month period. There you go. And like I said, clean interface. You can go up to 2 years. So you can see here the Jordan base rookie is in the green, and then the blue one is the sticker. And you can see the differences in how the prices have gone. And if you put your mouse over it, you can see, a $96,000 sale, and you can see a $99,630 sale. Now, again, remember when I said scalability. Now, one thing you're going to bear in mind, and we're going to get to that in a moment when I click a few more things. But again, this is kind of a cool thing. Now, this feature here is my collection, where you can add cards to your collection. Now, it is possible to add cards that are in the database currently, and then to add your own cards. So this is the first area where one of the weaknesses comes in, because if you're adding a card that's not currently in the database, you don't really get access to that comparison tool portion of it. So from that perspective, now that's something that, to their point, as the database expands, the capability may be there for your card to appear. So for now, you can put in a card that isn't currently in the database, but as you go along, there will be more. But like I said, I will talk more about the scalability part in a second. But there's one more thing I need to show you. So let's look at the help section here, because that's going to kind of illuminate where one of the potential issues I see down the road here could come into play. In the help here, you get a tutorial of how to get through the navigation, which is great. So this is Chris from House of Jordans there, explaining kind of how this whole card ladder thing goes and how you can get through the different parts. You got a Discord and your terms of service and policy. Awesome, great, fantastic. Now, let's take a look at this here. So is Card Ladder sales data reliable? Now, this is important. One other point that I'll put in their favor is transparency. So I like that. They tell you straight up where it's coming from. So right here, they tell you eBay is the leading source for public sports card market data. Very true. So unfortunately, the sales data is a nightmare, very low organization, and it is riddled with misleading and false information, et cetera, et cetera. Very true. All accurate. So here it is. So they say their solution is to track sports card data by scraping the eBay data daily for new sales for every card in their system. So they're using basically the eBay API to get the data, which is a fairly reliable source as far as getting raw data. But here's the key. Here's what's different about us. Every sale is vetted by our researchers before we admit it into our database. So stop right there. Record scratch. Very cool, but also immediately a potential bottleneck. Think about this. How many eBay sales are there? How many different cards? eBay is the biggest single sports card marketplace out there. It's not the only marketplace. Obviously, there's sales happening all the time at sports card shows. You can buy cards on Instagram, on Facebook. There's a million ways to do it. ComC, all that. But if every sale is vetted, how many sales can you vet in a day? How many researchers, quote unquote, their words, not mine, can you possibly have around in order to do it? Especially since right now, and this is the super key element that now I need to introduce into this, this is effectively a tech startup. It is a it is a software, online software concept that's been built out that is now effectively a proof of concept. Now, remember when I said about the $15 a month? So this is where it gets interesting. This is effectively like a monthly Kickstarter. It's a, early seed money. In reality, if it was me, I was trying to build up a database, I probably would have had like a soft launch with maybe some select individual people in the hobby to kind of give feedback on what cards to add offhand. Because what you do when you're doing it this way is that I think the card availability in the database on basketball is extremely strong, and on some of the high-end cards, extremely strong. but there are some, elements missing. And I don't doubt that they will fill in those gaps because, I believe every day they're adding more and more cards to this database. But right here, the vetting process pretty much guarantees that this database can't expand without a lot more manpower. They're basically going to need, like I said, how much time, if this vetting process is as thorough as it sounds like, then you're going to need a lot of people potentially, or you're going to have to keep this database is going to have to be scaled back to a certain point. You're going to have to say cards below a certain threshold are not worthy of being included in the database, even though eBay has the data for it. So, we cannot live the dream as of yet to have our 1988 Donruss Greg Jeffries PSA 10. And you say to yourself, well, who would want that? Well, all I have to say to you is $46 with 17 bids. I'm just saying. And despite my best efforts, 1988 Donruss Greg Jeffries, not so much. Not even the 1988 Donruss Roberto Alomar. No dice, I'm afraid. But I'll show you a little bit about some of the cards that are in there in a second. But like I said, this whole vetting system, while very good for making sure you have data integrity, and it's key, the data integrity piece, it also means that you can only put so many things in the database whether you want to or not. So then it becomes a bit of a thing, what cards do you choose? You're doing all the major sports. So now it gets really interesting because there's only so many hours in the day. So in a certain way, you kind of need enough money to be able to potentially hire people to be your researchers and analysts and be able to add enough volume. And again, eBay sales are happening constantly. Every single day, more data is being added into this database potentially. So this database is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but the amount that people can churn out is not going to get that much bigger until you get more hands on deck. And while at the startup phase, you can have, probably Chris from House of Jordans, if I was going to guess, is probably one of the analysts. I would probably guess a couple of their friends and close associates would be part of it as well. But you're going to need more hands on deck regardless. And you're going to need people that you're comfortable with doing the quote unquote vetting, or the vetting is going to get less and less stringent as you go along. I'm not suggesting that's the case, but I'm suggesting that's a potential downstream issue as, the platform gets bigger. So right here, every data point in the system is vetted by someone on our research team. Again, I don't know how many people are on the team, but and the fact that nothing is automatically added, again, great for data integrity, wonderful for actually making sure that sales are proper, but it also means you're going to have a lot of sales sitting inside of inside of another section of the database while they're waiting to be vetted. So it's kind of the PSA problem. It's not that PSA can't possibly get enough people to do it. It's just that can they hire enough people that they're willing to have do it and that they can reliably trust that will be able to give a consistent experience? Because in reality, if you get everybody off the street on there, you can get every PSA card out the door, but then you're going to have a lot of people send their stuff back when the quality starts to drop off. You could argue it's already happened, but that's a different conversation. The point is every time you scale, again, scalability, that word I was talking about, that's always going to be the problem. So you can see here from the vetting process, they shelve extreme outlier sales by auction, buy it now, or best offer. They're inconsistent with reasonable market trends. So again, we're talking about the human factor. And they specify this and they make that clear. For cards that sell frequently, only their historical auction data has been added, etc. Nuts and bolts data input. Again, this transparency here is wonderful. But you just have to think about how long this would take. And this is what I was talking about earlier. The purgatory folder until we have enough information to make a reasonable judgment. Everything here is talking about adds time to this process and potentially limits the size of this database and means it's going to be mostly useful for a fairly select group of people. And that's something that could potentially make it hard for them to grow it beyond a certain point without getting that influx of cash. So I'm wondering if this isn't the first step towards potentially getting more seed money down the road or an investor. This could be a proof of concept to potentially get more money in, to hire more people, to be able to speed up this part of the process, and in turn make it more useful to a bigger potential audience. So again, I'm purely speculating, and I'm merely throwing out kind of general thoughts that come to my mind when I look at this. It's just, they've got their own model that they've figured out, their business model, and I don't know what it is. I have no insight, but it is something that makes me question. It is one of those things where it's slick as hell. I got to give it full credit. And given what they've managed to do in the amount of time with presumably the size of the crew they have, I'm extremely impressed. But at the same time, I could see that issue becoming a major bottleneck as you try to get into it. And you've already got a sense of that in this early stage. Again, early stage, more stuff's being added. But let's take a look. Let me go back to the ladder here for a second. So let me just show you from the ladder perspective, looking at this. So I'm just going to go through this and I'm going to scroll slowly here. And I'm going to stop. So we got a Kyler Murray here, Silver Prism. Awesome. That's a recent card that was added. Now I'm going to keep scrolling. And what you're going to notice is a lot of basketball. You got the Ronald Acuna here at number 17. And I'm going to keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling. I'm still scrolling. What I'm doing is I'm trying to find the non-basketball cards. Tom Brady Bowman Chrome at 36. Fair enough. Now we're still going. And here you go. This is one of my favorites. And this is still on this the top level of this, which made me laugh. Out of all the hockey cards and all of hockey and all of creation, the 1990 O-Pee-Chee Premier Jaromir Jagr base PSA 10. That's the card that ends up on here. Not the Gretzky rookie, not a Bobby Orr rookie. And again, it's a consequence of the size of the database. But as I said earlier about the whole bottleneck thing, that's an issue I see. So let me show you one more thing here, because I don't want to dwell on this all day, but let me just show you one more thing. So let's just look at Mickey Mantle. Not an insignificant player. When you go look at Mickey Mantle, so let me try this. I'm just going to hit enter. So you got the 52 Topps Mickey Mantle base PSA 4. Cool. Now I'm going to go back to this listing, and I'm going to scroll. And what you're going to notice is the only Mickey Mantle card in the database is various versions of the PSA, but the 52 Topps Mantle. Now, you don't have to have every Mickey Mantle in this listing. You know, that's fair. Again, we're still starting off with a relatively small database that's going to have to expand over time. Because at first, there was only the one Mickey Mantle. So already I can tell you more has been added. But what's been added is more versions of the 52 Topps Mickey Mantle. Now, I grant you, it is the kind of the crown jewel of the post-war hobby. You know, it's unquestionably the iconic card. But the 51 Bowman rookie card, several other Mantles in the 1950s have a lot of sales volume. They would be ones that are, you know, the 56 Topps is an extremely popular issue. Like, there's other ones that I could mention that kind of I would think would be in there. And I'll throw this one at you. Now, I haven't tried this today, so let me give it a try live with you on this recording. No Hank Aaron. So no 54 Topps Hank Aaron. And this is one that I had a little bit of a laugh with. So this one was actually added. So this one I know is now there. So the 86 Topps Jerry Rice. It wasn't there the other day. Now, obviously, like I said, the database is expanding. But let me see if this one's been added. Okay, so 86 Topps Jerry Rice is there, but no Dan Marino. And how about John Elway? Have any John Elway? Nope. And here we go. How about this one? How about Joe Montana? No Joe Montana. So, you know, three of the biggest quarterbacks in NFL history. Again, Tom Brady is there, but there are multiple Tom Bradys. So from that perspective, it's there for sure. So you can see here, Tom Brady. So you got Bowman Chrome, Optic, you know, 2016 Optic, Playoff Contenders, which is certainly a big card. So you've got a handful of Tom Bradys here. And here's another one for you. How about Peyton Manning? If I can spell it correctly. No Peyton Manning. So the football side of the coin is a little bit lacking. And I can tell you the hockey side of it is a little bit lacking. Basketball is well stocked, I would say. And again, this is not meant to be a criticism. The question becomes, how can you fill this in? And the question is, outside of feedback you're getting from users directly, how do you decide what to include, what not to include? Obviously, sales volume should play into this. You know, pricing should play into it. But again, we're back to the whole my collection thing. And part of the value here is this additional statistical data. So if I open up the Jaromir Jagr, I can get the overall kind of general sense of the current value. But you can see here, there is no predicted value for this card. So even though there is data, it's not like this data has resulted in additional information. We've got this market cap, all-time ROI, very cool information. And obviously you can pull up all the sales data. So this is from the last 2 years. You can see that it peaked around June 7th and it's hanging around up here. And you can see down here, it was $39.30 back in 2018. So this is the last 2 years. And one cool thing that I will give credit, you got the ROI breakdown here. But what you can do is you can go view all sales. And if you take the recent sales here, you can actually click this and it will send you to the auction. If it's recent enough, you actually pull it. So this is an auction from 4 Sharp Corners where it was sold. So fantastic. From that perspective, this is one thing I can tell you that is similar to the Market Movers Tour, where it can take you to it. Obviously, if you take really old sales, you're not going to be able to do this link because eBay won't have it anymore. But it is very cool when you want to evaluate certain specific cards. The point, though, is that there's a lot of stuff missing. And in the same vein, I'll use Gordie Howe as an example. So they've got the Gordie Howe 51 Parkhurst rookie. Certainly an iconic card for him. But the 54 Topps is also an iconic card. It's similar in concept to the way the 52 Topps Mantle is almost more popular than the Mantle rookie. In the same vein, I would say the 54 Topps Gordie Howe is one of his iconic cards. Again, I'm using hockey because that's my lane. That's the area where I spend most of my hobby life in because I know it better. But I know baseball pretty well too, and there's certainly some major cards missing from that. Again, not meant to be a criticism, but even if you want to add that into the database, the fact that every single thing has to be vetted. So when you get into these other sports and really start expanding the holdings and the thing, what you're looking at is, okay, so now which one of your team is going to be vetting those? Because it's very clear the House of Jordan's crew and Cardboard Chronicles have a much stronger base in basketball. So how are you going to be able to tell? Are you going to use the same markers, the same indicators? With the whole Market Movers tool, they went the more data analytics route and made it very automated in the sense that they're looking for keywords, they're looking for certain tip-offs, low feedback ratings to use filters. And they're starting with the same base as far as the eBay API. But here, they're taking the eBay API and then adding on the human layer, which can be extremely helpful. And obviously the advanced algorithms and things they've thrown in here have a different value add. My question becomes, as a person who potentially would be paying for this, how comfortable are you basically paying the early build of the startup? You might be perfectly willing to, and that makes perfect sense. I just don't know if for most collectors, this is going to hold much value for months or even potentially years, depending on how quickly that database is able to grow. So it's a bit of a chicken or the egg. If they don't get enough paying subscribers for long enough, the additional funds needed to bring in more analysts who can vet more data, which can expand that database faster and also bring more data points to the existing cards. So as this database gets bigger, if the vetting process, one of two things is going to have to happen. Either they're going to need a lot of people vetting, the people vetting are going to have to get a lot faster, or the vetting process is going to get a lot less stringent as you go along. And if the vetting process gets a lot less stringent, then the value of the vetting immediately starts to go down. Again, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom about this. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think the execution is interesting. I just don't know how scalable it is. And I don't know how comfortable I would be personally putting the $15 a month to fund the early startup phase of the project. But it is, as I said, a very cool idea, and hobby innovation it's good to have ideas out there, and it's good to have people trying different variations on this. So I wish them the absolute best of luck. I think there is some potential in a lot of these ideas, but I'm very curious to see kind of how that plays out as far as value in this early phase for these beta testers, because even though it's $50 a month, it is $50 a month out of your pocket, so that it becomes how much utility do you get out of this? Because as a database tool, you can build your own database. As a research tool, you can do your own research. Now, mind you, the same thing as the Market Movers tool. You can get the research information out of there too. So it becomes how much value do you put on being able to generate the data, but being able to generate it in a visual manner, being able to look at it in this manner, being able to break it down this way without, being able to pull the data from the API yourself, being comfortable with that, and being able to turn that data into something legible. Because this kind of trend line is a lot easier to figure out than trying to look at the raw data yourself. So there is value to that. The question becomes then, is the value there for you? Does the algorithm get to a point where it starts to provide a value if you start looking at those undervalued cards? Does the accuracy get to a stage where you can feel comfortable in being able to use this as a predictor of the market itself? So I'll leave it at that. I think the overall is that it is a very interesting idea. It's not something that I'll pay $15 for, but I think it was really cool to get a chance to take a look at it, and I'll be fascinated to see where it goes. So I wish them the best of luck. They certainly have done the advertising part of it very well. And like I said, given the amount of time they've taken to put this thing together, I'm extremely impressed with what they've come up with. But I do think the scalability is going to be a question, and that's something they're going to have to figure out. And hopefully they've got some answers to that question, and they don't have to give those answers to me, but it's something that I'll be very curious to see where it goes going forward. So if you made it to the end of this long video, thank you very much. I did want to take a bit of a deep dive. These are the things that go through my head very clearly. But thank you as always for listening. Like, subscribe, and comment if you haven't already. I'd love to hear any feedback you have, and I'm happy to have a conversation and engage in the comments. Otherwise, it'll be back to normal programming coming for the next video. Thanks as always for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.